I didn't talk about this a whole lot, but I'm planning to do an image and design a graphic for this. Essentially, what's happening is that Gulf Coast excess liquefied natural gas is being offloaded to the Caribbean at high prices because these islands are dependent on fossil fuels. And so the Puerto Rican government, along with the outside companies that manage the fossil fuels, have essentially hamstringed the island so that they can make a profit off of the Caribbean. And
yeah, it sounds very corrupt to me. And, you know, the oil companies are making mucho bucks and they're not going to give that up. I mean, this is a picture of a disaster that's going to continue for years.
Yes, and it's on the path to continue. And that's unfortunate because Puerto Rico has a goal of 100% renewable by 2050, as does the United States as a whole. So it's obvious that things are working at cross purposes here.
Yeah.
No, Norlene?
One of the big issues that came up, as I'm sure you're well aware, Chelsea, also was a total lack of confidence on the part of the Puerto Rican people in their government because of that big corruption issue.
Yes.
So both with the governor and with the mayor of San Juan, has that gotten better? Are people feeling a little bit more like their own government is actually working in a positive way on this? Because there was such a negative backlash when it was discovered that all this money was available, and you know that relatively little bit to nothing had been done, and immediately there were big suspicions of corruption, and some of the corruption was proven. Can you speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, I would say, and I've leaned heavily on my mentors on the ground because it's impossible to understand it as someone who doesn't live there. But what I've heard is from the recent governor's new governor that was voted in is that it's just more of the same. And that's very unfortunate. This person has worked closely with the Secretary of Energy at the cabinet level, Secretary Granholm, but his goals are different than the US goals and are different than the goals of the people of Puerto Rico. So really how the people are going to get somewhere is if this new team at the Department of Energy listens to them and prioritizes the funds for renewables, or if what I'm suggesting, if there's a law change to only allow disaster funds to meet a certain resilience metric. And so you wouldn't be able to replace the fossil fuels anywhere in the United States.
LUMI has just an absolute grip on right now. So that's going to be very hard to break.
Yes, and they just a few months ago, they extended their contract. They had sort of a probationary contract to manage the grid. And now you have that outside company really having a stranglehold and not delivering anything better than what was there before.
Right.
But they're profiting.
You've still got your work cut out for you, but this is marvelous. It looks like you're using the tools that you've got to.
Yeah, and a big part of this work is also just spreading the word and pointing back at the people in Puerto Rico. They've done so much for themselves. They don't need any my help, but what I hope to be able to do is pave the way and open more minds so that we can start thinking about this issue so that we don't have to talk about it in 10 years and in 20 years facing the same problem.
Yes, wouldn't be great?
With climate change, I'm wondering what the budget of FEMA is, because they're using it for California, for Texas, they're using it for all kinds of places. It must be in the trillions.
My professor and advisor, Danielle Rivera, talked about this last week. During that 2017 and 2018, FEMA ran out of money. They ran out of budget and they couldn't respond. So I think that we're going to see that in a big way. Because how FEMA, I'm focused on long-term recovery, but FEMA also disperses immediate recovery needs. Without a change, there will not be enough money, which is exactly what you're saying, Nancy.
Thank you for the information.
Yeah, absolutely.
So you touched on, the underground utilities, and I don't know squat about any of this, but it just seems to me, and I'm sure it's very expensive to do, but then it'd more or less be there, except for earthquakes, but I don't know how prone Puerto Rico is that. What about then, putting in more of the underground utilities for electric, probably, water too, the things that get destroyed over and over and over again by these storms?
They've talked about undergrounding transmission and distribution lines so that you don't have the overhead power lines, but it is so expensive and it can be flooded. And so if it floods, it also doesn't happen.
Oops.
And one thing that's interesting with Puerto Rico is that most of the generated power is in the south, taking it north across mountains to the city of San Juan. So you have a large distance and potential for flooding. So people would instead like to have what has been studied extensively in California, which is decentralized. So having community solar or rooftop solar, and that way, if there's a problem, it's only in a neighborhood rather than the whole island. So instead of doing undergrounding, the proposals are more for grouped systems of power.
And I saw an interesting article where they were looking for local large generators. That's how which seemed, like a practical solution.
Yeah. And there's a community in the center of Puerto Rico that's been doing this for about 60 years called Adjuntas. So they've proved that you can run a Puerto Rican community on solar power.
Bobby?
I just want to say kudos to you for such a clear, thorough presentation.
Wonderful.
You didn't go over our heads to where we're lost when you're talking about details. And, it's just so clear and so useful for us to know, for those of us that weren't exposed to this. And kudos for Karen for picking you out as someone our branch would be interested in hearing. And kudos for AAUW for choosing to support you.
Oh, thank you. And this is a longer presentation, so I packed a lot in. But I hope
Terrific. Yes.
I hope it gave a good overview of the problem, the opportunities, and also the ways that this is somewhat similar to what we experience in California, which is a reason why I got interested in the beginning and spent the time to develop the relationship with my mentor.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chelsea. Oh, Edie?
Your flow chart was so gorgeous and so clear and clean.
Uh-huh.
It's perfect. Oh, they're going to be so excited in DC to have you there.
Thank you, Edith. I appreciate it. It took
Thank
many
you.
conversations to get there.
We should give you some AAUW bling to take it wrong.
It makes your point, though, very clearly, Chelsea, of all the different layers of involvement, and really answers the question visually of why, with all this money available, has so little been done, which of course is the question Time Magazine articles dealt with, why are we still waiting on helping Puerto Rico? But that chart shows that it's just too many hands.
Mhm.
And I felt you presented the obstacles very clearly without too strongly taking sides on any of these issues, which would be very easy for me to do. I felt as though I understood the big picture a lot better than I did before.
Yeah, I agree. And I just want to say that it gives us a different way of looking at these problems. And I really appreciated that it makes me rethink the way I look at, there's always some flaw in the ointment when we come up with new laws or whatever. But you gave us a way of looking at this and thinking about it in terms of incentivizing what you really want, incentivizing getting power back to the people quickly, and incentivizing the resilience of whatever system you put in place, not incentivizing just replacing what's there.
Exactly. Thanks, Linda.
Is there anything that we can do specifically to help this situation?
Yes. So one of the things that comes up after the hurricanes is direct relief. So it's something to keep an eye on if you want to help people directly. But there's something else that's interesting and that I didn't talk about in this presentation, and that is that Congress doesn't have a representative for Puerto Rico.
Puerto Rico. That's right.
So before I came to Berkeley, I worked with Ruth, the AAUW alumna, and this was during 2020, beginning of COVID quarantines, we called and got through to 12 congressional offices, and they were the top offices. So Senator Bernie Sanders, Senator Elizabeth Warren, Senator Kirsten Gillibrand, and the list goes on. So these top folks, Representative Katie Porter, everyone that works on Puerto Rico, we got in touch with. And what I would encourage people to do is to talk to their representatives about Puerto Rico and to remind them how similar it is to our issues in California, and solutions for Puerto Rico affect us as well here, reminding them that it's important to you that they're considering these improvements. So in that way, sort of adding it, remembering those other places, the territories of the United States, Guam, American Samoa, and Puerto Rico, and including that in your comments when you call.
Elsie, thank you. Wonderful, wonderful presentation, and we're so proud to have you going to DC and presenting this. I think that you'll find some willing listeners. I really think so. And thank you for helping us move forward. We appreciate you.
Good luck on your presentation. Yes.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you for your generous support and your time. It's meant so much to me, and it's really great to see you and meet you all. And when I'm back in San Diego, I hope to be able to attend one of your meetings as well.
You're welcome.
Love to have you as a member.
Yes, of course.
That's true.
Yeah, we'd love to have you.
We can do that. So we'll let Chelsea go. I have just, it won't take but a couple of minutes, but I was asked to give like a summary of the some of our other products. So Chelsea, we'll let you go back because I know you have some studies to do. So we know that. So originally I was asked to give kind of an update or some explanation of the Interbranch Council. Some of you are familiar with it, some are not. When I looked at that and said, that won't take a whole meeting. There's no way that would take a whole meeting. So I said, well, you know what? I'm for a couple of years here, I'm in the driver's seat. I've got 41 California scholars. Let's grab one. And when I realized that Chelsea had been local as well, and she was so excited saying, oh yeah, I know this area real well. I lived and worked there. I says, you're our gal. So any rate, I'm going to switch gears and talk just a moment about the Interbranch Council. Not all states have such a thing, but California does. We're certainly a very long